We want to be your retirement caddy.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, Mr. Cook, look around. This is the brand new digital studio.
Pretty nice. Got a lot of different looks here, and every time advisors come in, we can do social media. We can do a lot.
It's cool to see all the advancements, and it's been 11 years for you and I. How much we've grown, and here we are in a 53,000 square foot facility.
And the reason I got into radio was because you didn't get to see this face or this haircut. And
now we
so
put you on.
Then they start putting me on video, and now I got to worry about what I'm wearing, what I'm looking like. But that's beside the point.
Which, by the way, your new YouTube video is going to launch. Has it launched? It's going to launch. It's available
very soon
now?
in July, and it's called Selling with Stories. And one of the things that we do with advisors when they come here is try to make them be a better communicator, be a coach to them, because they know their stuff. They know how to talk about RMDs. They know how to talk about taxes and income planning. But how do you talk about it, especially when you're on the radio, in a seminar, in a podcast?
What makes a good storyteller?
I think painting pictures in people's heads. When I was on the radio for 40 years, I loved listening to people like Harry Chapin and Dan Fogelberg. And because of the fact that those stories, I could see in my head what they were singing. They were great, great storytellers. And I think the very same thing has to translate over to when you're doing a financial radio show, giving people kind of an illustration of what you're talking about. To say that fees are a bad thing, okay. To tell me that if you're on a hike and you got a backpack on and you have a bag of rocks back there, that's kind of what it is to have fees in your portfolio. It slows you down. It makes things difficult for you. We can take some of those rocks out of your backpack.
When we were in commercial radio, songs are basically stories set to music, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. But when we were in commercial radio, we had to basically tell a story within 20 seconds, 30 seconds,
right?
Less than a minute. How is that exercise helped you now help our advisors paint a picture and tell a story?
There's the old KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid. Every time we looked at a piece of content, we had to go like this. You had to take a full newspaper article, magazine article, whatever like that, and figure out, how do I tell this story in a very short period of time? Because people have a very short attention span.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is, you figure out exactly what are your bullet points, how do you want to bring that point across, but now I got to figure out a story and how to tell that story. And painting pictures in people's heads, I think, is the best way to do it.
Do you remember? This is going back pre-Impact, when we were at Atlanta's Greatest Hits. So I was the music director. So it was a Greatest Hits station. So it was 60s, 70s, and 80s. Right. So what's the blend of blending all this music together? There's a lot of theory, there's a lot of consultancy, and everybody has an opinion on that, but it's the feel, right? It's the feel. So I would set up a playlist, and I'd have some music in question. So when you would get off the air, I'd say, "Cook, I need you, man. What do you think about this? What do you think about these songs?" And
you can't play the Four Tops next to the Temptations. So it's like, why? They sound the same. We went to a lot of granular level to try to figure that stuff out. But when I think about, your background is in country music. Why is country music such a huge phenomenon in this country?
Stories,
It's
man.
the stories. It's, and we laugh about dogs and trucks and trains and all that kind of stuff, but people can see it in their heads, and you can relate to it.
For advisors, what's the benefit? And you've seen a lot of this. You've seen a lot of these experiences. What's a good example of an advisor that maybe wasn't the best storyteller, but listened to our coaching and became a great storyteller?
Relatability. I think that once we start telling advisors it's okay to tell stories about your family, it's okay to tell stories about your clients. I have one advisor that at the beginning of the show, we spend 2 or 3 minutes talking about what they did over the weekend, and he's got kids in soccer, and he loves to cook, and we do a little bit of that. And he tells me that his family listens to the show, and they only listen to the first 10 minutes because they want to find out what's going on with him. And I think that we think and we believe that once somebody listens to you on the radio for 6 months, 6 months, it just takes a little while, that they relate to you. And they suddenly feel as though, yeah, I could go in and talk to that person. And when they walk in the door and they sit down at the conference table, they know you a lot more than you know them. So it's like they're ready. I've had people say, I'm ready with a pen to sign right now because I've heard you on the radio. I've literally had a consultation for the last 6 months. And now the advisor goes, well, now we got to get to know you. And I got to do my part here. So it is a listener, it is a client that I think is more ready to do business because they've literally been in the conference room with you for months.
And they get each other.
Yeah.
Or the listener or the viewer feels that they know them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so unconventional because what we hear is, hey, you have to talk about product. You have to talk about percentages. You know, you got to tell them call. That's great, but
that's portion
of that.
Yeah, it really is that I think once they get to know you, I think that they can get that information anywhere. They can go to CNBC and find out what the market's doing. They can get a lot of opinion from a lot of talking heads, but you're right there. They can come see you in a brick and mortar building at your office. And for you to say, well, what does this mean to me? You know, okay, the Fed's doing whatever it's doing. What does that mean to me? That's really your job as an advisor, is to sit down and say, what does this mean to you? How does this affect you? Should you be making any moves? That's really what we're trying to do.
The beauty of this is that what we help our advisors learn, what we coach our advisors to do on the radio, they can absolutely use in the boardroom, in the conference room, at workshops and seminars. And I like to say part of storytelling, part of communicating is listening. We do a lot of interviews. We help our advisors do a lot of interviews with our on-tour programs. And how many questions have you and I written over the last 11 years for these on tours? Probably thousands.
I know it.
So you said something, though. You said something that I keep using. And it was, I guess it was before the Murray brothers on tour, about the listening story, and you got to say it. And
okay,
I don't want to give it away, but you got to do it, man. This is great. Listen to this.
Interviewing is a skill. And you've got to listen to that person that you're talking to. And when you prepare for an interview, you're writing down a lot of questions and everything. And many people will have a script right in front of them of all the questions that they want to ask. And I had a program director who told me once, they said, if you were interviewing O.J. Simpson and all of a sudden he just broke down right in front of you and said, okay, I'm just going to tell you I did it. And you go, okay, so tell me about your days with the Buffalo Bills. And you've got to listen, because most of the time the best interviews happen when somebody says something to the effect of, well, I was loading the dishwasher the other day and, all right, hold on, stop right there. Tell me how you load a dishwasher. Yep. And that can get into some fun conversation and make you more human and make everything much more relatable.
And that's an interview when you're interviewing a celebrity for on tour, but when you're also meeting with a client for the first time.
Absolutely. I do a thing in Selling with Stories about
that's your new YouTube.
My new YouTube podcast, and so we talk about your favorite song, and there are songs that you are embedded with in your soul that happened in high school, and they're your favorite songs. Well, in a sense, a client's story is their favorite song. And they're telling you that song, they're telling you their story, and at the same time, I believe the client wants to know your favorite song. They want to know your story. Why are you in this business? And that's a great place to tell your story. I've had lots of advisors have very emotional stories of why they're in this business, because they had a bad experience, or a parent had a bad experience. Somebody had an experience where an advisor wouldn't talk to them because they didn't have enough money or something like that. And to tell those emotional stories, I think, really relates to the listener.
But there's a lot of hesitancy from some advisors, I've got experience with that myself. Why do you think that is? Is they just don't want to be vulnerable? They
Yeah.
don't know that they can.
Yeah.
That it's okay to do that.
Most of our advisors are so smart, and they have so much knowledge that they want to dump all that knowledge on their radio show, and it's all about markets, it's about taxes, it's about this, and like boring, and it's difficult. So we would like for you to download that information about yourself to your audience at the same time, because once they like you and they trust you, then they can hear all that stuff and how it's going to help them financially.
We call you the GOAT. For various reasons, and if you know Randy, if you've worked with Randy, you know that. But your story, your dad was actually
A disc jockey.
a disc jockey.
Yeah. He was. He worked overnights. He worked nighttime. He never worked mornings. I worked the morning show, which was pretty cool. But yeah, I grew up with a guy who was always out front. You know, he was always the MC. He was always that guy who was speaking to people, and that's one of the biggest fears that people have is standing up in front of people and talking. Standing in front of one of these and talking, even by yourself. And that part of me growing up, I was never afraid of that. Just standing up in front of and talking to people.
But what would you say to someone who thinks they're afraid of it, that hasn't done it yet, to break that barrier?
Just visualizing that one person. We always talked in radio about how we would visualize who our listener was. It was Ashley, who was married, and she had 2 kids, and they drove a minivan.
Had the cardboard cutout in the
Exactly.
studio.
Yeah, and you would talk to Ashley. And so I think the same thing. Figure out who your client is. Visualize them in your head. How much money do they have? What kind of questions do they usually ask? And what are they looking for? Talk to that person, visualize that person, and all of a sudden now you're talking to one person instead of saying, well, folks, this is what we should do. Get rid of folks. I want to get rid of, I want to ban
listeners.
that.
I want to talk to my listeners.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're talking to one person.
Right. Yeah.
One
If
person.
you're listening to me right now, let's get rid of all of that. Talk to one person.
These stories, and I've seen this myself because we've lived it for 30 plus years. When we were outside in commercial radio, but when you're on the radio or podcast or YouTube now, everything that you do, you start to run through that filter of how am I going to use this on my radio show? How am I going to use this on my podcast, on my YouTube? That also helps to build a great storytelling.
You think about great
skill.
comedians like a George Carlin, and we would marvel at how he would take little tiny things and talk about it for 20 minutes. At the same time, you've got to become an observationalist. You got to see things in your life. You've got to see things in your client meetings and take those little nuggets and translate those into stories on the radio that I think will relate. Because if it's happening to your clients, it's probably happening to a lot of clients, and they can relate to it.
What's a good tip that someone can take away from, a nugget or two from Randy Cook?
I would just say,
Don't step on power lines, down power lines.
Don't stick your finger in a socket.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah,
that's good. We can wrap.
Don't tell your barber that you don't want to see him in 3 months because this is what happens. And
that is a great looking haircut, man. That is a great. I'm serious.
Oh well, I departed from what I usually do, and I've been getting a lot of comments. But in any effect, a nugget that you can take from me, I would say that we are going to try to make you a relatable person, a person who somebody wants to sit down with. And that's a big hurdle because a lot of people are afraid to talk to a financial advisor because they think, I don't have enough money. I don't deserve to be here. This is for rich people. But we want to make sure everybody realizes your fortune is your fortune, whether it's $500,000 or $5 million. It deserves to have management, and you deserve this kind of service. And we want to make sure that the person who's telling you that really is the person that you latch onto.
All right, now I'm really going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Are you ready? Are you sitting down?
I'm ready.
You're sitting down. Okay, great. Golf tip for someone. Because not only is he the GOAT on radio, but he is absolutely the GOAT playing golf.
You got to practice. Yeah, there's a guy in our office right now that says, Randy, I just bought a new set of golf clubs. I go, you're screwed up for life. It is a game, as they say in the movies, it is played, it is never mastered. So go out and enjoy yourself and have some fun. I played at Pebble Beach, and I I looked at videos and I would listen to podcasts and how am I going to do this? And I was afraid that I would be overcome by the views and I wouldn't be able to concentrate. And the one thing that somebody said at the end of a podcast was, look, when you stand on the first tee at Pebble Beach, you are one of the luckiest people in the entire world.
Wow.
Go out and enjoy it. And that was the best advice that I could get. So I would say just go out and enjoy it. You're outside for 5 hours. Enjoy it.
Well, I've taken that advice to heart. That's why I don't keep score. I just go out to have a good time.
There you go.
But I think it was we were at a Murray Brothers, the Caddyshack, on tour for Bill Murray and his brothers. I think it was Brian Murray or
Brian Doyle.
Brian Doyle or one of the brothers that said, we're not that good to take it so serious.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, you hit a bad shot. Are you making your living doing this? No. Are you out here to drink some beer, be with some friends, and have a good time? Yes. Take your next shot and be happy.
Well, we could talk about golf for several podcasts, but the way we can turn this around, and you're always looking at an angle. What's the angle here? And the angle with golf is just go out there, practice, and have a good time. When you do radio, when you do media with impact, you're going to practice. But really, when you sit down with us to record your radio show, your podcast, your TV, you got to have fun.
Absolutely. And when you think about golf, I mean, there's so many wonderful metaphors with golf. You stand on the tee box and you see woods over here and a bunker over here and water over here. Those are the hazards of golf. Well, there's hazards in retirement planning too. There's taxes and there's
See that?
long-term
See what he just
care.
did there?
There's
See what he
all
just
these
did
different
there?
things. And we want to be your retirement caddy, so to speak, and give you that advice that you need to navigate that course.
All right, stop it right there. Stop
Can't
it
help
right
myself.
there. You've
Sorry.
given way too much. You see, you are a giver, Mr. Cook, and that's all you guys get. If you want to know more, you can check out Randy and his new video series on the Impact YouTube channel. And what's that called?
Selling with Stories.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Cook. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you as always, sir. It's a pleasure working with you. For how long have we been working together?
11 years here, but a lot more than that, and I don't even want to talk about it.
Well, if you want to learn more about how Impact can help grow your practice, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow wherever you get your favorite podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.